But today, I'm the greatest of all time. Thank you.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top.
Yo, no, I ain't the type to give up. If I do something, man, I do it till I get what I want. I turn a business out of nothing into something I love. I got a poker face, but honestly, I'm not one to bluff. I flip a switch, never miss, man, I always stay up. Don't let them see you, always have a plan to stay tough. This life ahead of you ain't easy, it was built to be rough. But that's what makes a personality, is tragedy, bruh. So keep your head on your shoulders. Now we ain't out here moving rocks, we out here moving boulders. Now we ain't getting posterized, we out here making posters. And we ain't got nothing to hide, we move forward like soldiers. You better wake up for the pay stub, or you'll pay up. Don't make love to the game, bruh, fuck the game up. Change up, rearrange stuff to your greatness. Same us for the way up, play the game, bruh.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top, yeah.
You know I'm always honest, there ain't no way I'll never stop it.
I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top,
I'm always flirting with pain, she like to hurt me and maim. I'm always working to change, but she's still lurking the same. I keep on building a dynasty while the haters be trying me, but they hate from inside.
All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Unscripted here on the Elite Sports and Entertainment Network. I'm going to be your host and producer this afternoon, Logan Landers, and join me to do an NBA 2020 Top 10 pick redraft is our resident stat guy here on the network, Dustin Reeves. Dustin, how you doing this afternoon, man?
Slowly warming up, but we're getting there.
I got you. Yeah, I just got to stay warm, man, in this rough winter in mid-January. But spring is right around the corner, thank God, and it'll start warming up here relatively soon. So just got to tough it out for a few more weeks and months. But it is right there, and it's going to be a fun time when that happens. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, give us a like, follow, share, and, of course, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. We go live each and every single week on all of our social media platforms, as you can see, over on Facebook, on X, on TikTok, on YouTube, and on Twitch. You can check us all out at these links here. Best way to find it, there's going to be a link tree, which is in the description of all of our episodes, that has basically a one-stop shop for all of these, and our brand new LinkedIn. If you want to connect with us on a personal level, professional level, check us out over there and get in contact with us. If you want to come join the network, that is the best way for you guys to do so. Shoot us a message over there, and we will respond in a timely manner. Well, Dustin, let's get into it, man. 2020, as we know, is a very wild year for a lot of different reasons. And we're going to be talking some NBA redraft, from 4 years ago now at this point, and which guys we would keep in these spots, who would we move around, and who would fall out and maybe bring in to the top 10. So let's get it going, man. Number one overall pick in 2020 for the Minnesota Timberwolves was Anthony Edwards. Personally, I think that they have done a good job with that. I think Edwards has, lived up to his hype, as we see, the fruits of Minnesota's labors right now with how well they've done so far in the 2024 season. They've looked great. And I think Edwards obviously has played a big part of that. They've made a lot of trades in recent years that they didn't have in 2020, but they have done a really good job of building that team, I would say, around Edwards. They know this is his team for the foreseeable future. So I personally would keep him at number one. I think that Anthony Edwards has so far in his young career lived up to that hype of being number one overall pick because, so far, right? Obviously Minnesota hasn't gotten to a championship or anything like that, but they are looking very good, especially at the time of this recording. So what are your thoughts? Would you keep Ant coming out of Georgia at number one?
Anthony Edwards, when you look at how that draft unfolded, he was kind of the wild card in that draft because you saw the potential that he had when he was at Georgia. Mm-hmm. But all the talk heading into the draft was James Wiseman, because of what he did in his brief 15-game stint at Memphis. And not to take anything away from him, but you're playing at Memphis. It's not like you're playing in the SEC and doing what Anthony Edwards was doing in the SEC. And he was okay as a rookie. I'm not going to sit here and say he was a great rookie, But by year 2, he already turned that corner, and now he's one of the 10 best players in the NBA, and he's a big reason why the Minnesota Timberwolves are right up there with Oklahoma City this year for that number 1 spot in the West. So, I mean, this was pretty much a done given home run pick by Minnesota.
Yeah, well said. I think that obviously Anthony Edwards, one of the best selections in this draft, and I think it's easy to see why that we would keep him at number 1. Minnesota, Minnesota in recent years hasn't had the greatest draft class, but my God, they knocked it out of the park with this guy. So well done for them. Anthony Edwards staying at number 1 for both of our spots here. And stat guy, you mentioned him, you just brought him up, and James Wiseman, as you mentioned, had a 15-game career in college at Memphis, but the Golden State Warriors brass thought that it was enough at that time to bring him on to already a stacked roster. All those years ago, thought that he could be the next kind of focal piece and focal point in that Warriors dynasty. But as we've seen, man, that ain't the case. Wiseman just has not lived up to the hype, hasn't produced, just has not been able to get it going. Has been bounced around. Is he still in Detroit? Or did he just get traded the other day to Washington?
I think he's still in Detroit. I'm not sure, though.
Okay. Well, regardless, he is.
Regardless, he's turning into a journeyman.
Yes. He is definitely not going to be a number 2 overall selection in this redraft. He's just not got it going, and I think that speaks to as you mentioned, his lack of experience in college. He didn't play much. It was a reach then. I get he had a dominant 15 games, but man, it's 15 games.
Yeah.
I mean, Linsanity had a great run for 2 months, and then he became what Jeremy Lin was. But yeah, James Wiseman, man, definitely not a number 2 overall pick. Not even in our top 10, not even a first rounder if we redid it, I bet. But who would you have go number 2 overall to Golden State back in 2020 if you had to redo it?
See, this is the hardest part, just because you look at that Golden State roster. And honestly, I would still put James Wiseman number 2 because the only piece that the Warriors were missing was a center. They had Curry, they had Durant, they had Green, and they had Thompson. But Andrew Bogut retired, so they needed a center. Yeah. And when you look at this draft board, James Wiseman is literally the only center that's really on this draft board. There's some other ones on there. And then even round 2, there wasn't any big name centers out there. So yes, James Wiseman has struggled, but in a way, I think Golden State gave up on him a little too quick also because they play so much small ball. They usually go with like a 4-guard lineup, and then you have either Draymond Green or Kayvon Looney's playing that post position. If they would have held on to him, I think he could have turned into a better player. And this is the one time that I would, despite him looking like he's going to be a bust at this point, this is the one time that I would keep the pick the same, mainly because of who was picking number 2, and it was the only position that Golden State needed to address.
Yeah, I mean, I can see your reasoning for that. For me, and I'm kind of leaning more towards the small ball factor of this. You mentioned that, obviously they drafted a big man because that's what they needed. But I don't have a list of the free agents available in 2020. I don't know who they maybe could have picked up, but here's my theory, Dustin. I know you're going to like this one. Imagine if Golden State goes with a big name or a free agent, even if it's just a decent piece for center, right, to help fill out that 5 spot.
Yep.
And if you continue, because look, Golden State, they were built on small ball. That's how they got the ball going. Bounce the rock around, make threes, have, lead the league in assist. Imagine if they had this young buck here, man, as their 6th man coming off the bench, who's currently right now in Indiana. Imagine if they drafted Tyrese Halliburton with that number 2 overall selection. Could you imagine the stats they would probably still be putting up with that dirty lineup with him? Curry was, he was still in his stride. Thompson, that was right before the injuries got to him. Draymond was still doing his thing, and we know that they had a really good bench as well with a lot of vets. Iguodala is just what I think of. Sean Livingston, I believe, was still there. So I thought that if you could have got Halliburton as a young stud and could have built him around those vets, I mean, I think that would have been dirty, and that would have, really kept Golden State, in the top echelon. Obviously, we know that they won a championship not too long ago.
Yeah.
But looking current day, he would be a really, really good piece now, especially on that bench, which is just depleted in Golden State. So that's who I got going number 2. But I obviously, of course, I do see your stance on keeping Wiseman.
Yeah,
who are some of the free agents?
Anthony Davis would have been the only big name free agent center. Otherwise, you had the guys like Serge Ibaka, who was like 34, 35 at that point.
Been a defensive guy. Get you a couple points. If
Yeah,
need be.
Gordon Hayward's a forward.
Yeah.
Bogdanovich, Jeremy Grant, Christian Wood.
Yeah, Wood was still younger at that point.
Yeah, Dario Saric, Mason
Who's there
Plumlee,
now?
Mason Plumlee, and Jakob Poeltl. So, I mean,
Yeah.
outside of Anthony Davis, he really didn't have too many options if you wanted
Star. Yeah, out of those, I personally would have went with Jakob Poeltl just because I like his game. I think it would have fit well in Golden State because we know what he did what he's done with San Antonio. How they kind of run in a way similar systems.
Slow for Golden State.
No, yeah, I understand. And obviously, like you mentioned, with David Lee retiring, who was a big piece with that. Even though, like I said, the points and stuff weren't there, but he was a big.
James Wiseman could at least run because he was athletic, and I think that's the reason why they took him.
Yep. All right, man. Let's keep it moving. Number 3 overall, Charlotte Hornets go with LaMelo Ball, who we know has battled some injury history as of late. He's back on the court now, thankfully. But would you keep him at number 3? Because obviously Charlotte, he's one of their best players, but Charlotte hasn't really done much since they drafted him. They haven't really went anywhere. Haven't really been making a lot of noise in the Eastern Conference, which you can say is the weaker conference of the two. So would you have kept him at number 3 with LaMelo Ball, or would you have went somewhere else?
No, I would not have kept him at number 3, but I'm going to because of who picks next, and I'll explain to that when we get to number 4.
Okay.
But I would keep him at number 3 just because he is a great point guard, and he really is Charlotte's best player. I mean, you really can't do much with Gordon Hayward being hurt half the time he was there, and LaMelo Ball's been injured this year, but we've seen it before. When he has even minimal role players around him, Charlotte did make the playoffs with him. Mm-hmm. So it's not like they haven't had a ton of success, but he still got Charlotte to the playoffs with him primarily being the only player that could score 20 points. It would be interesting to see what would happen if you put more talent around him, but I would keep him at number 3 because he's proven to be the best of the 3 Ball brothers.
Yeah, obviously, LaMelo had a cup of coffee with, I think, the Pistons and maybe the Kings or someone, but he never really had a chance in the league. Lonzo, promising young start, right, with Los Angeles, and had a nice little run with Chicago before he got hurt. And I mean, we don't really even know if he's going to even come back and play with how bad his knees are, at such a young age, which is unfortunate. But LaMelo, obviously he is a very flashy player. He's made a young splash, and he's done a good job. I think he is definitely worthy of being a top pick still. He's done great things out there in Charlotte. They just have not built around him. As you mentioned, they made the playoffs not too long ago. But Charlotte's just one of those franchises that they're obviously small market, and they got to hope you can keep LaMelo as much as you can and before his contract's up, man, or else I think that he's just going to get a load of offers for a lot of money from a bigger name, bigger market, and he could easily bounce. And that's just the uncertainty, and that's just how unfortunate it is for kind of smaller market teams. For me, I would keep him in Charlotte. Obviously, he's been a good fit there. And I like what he's done and his production outside of obviously the injury year from last year and whatnot. I still think he's been worthy of that top 3 pick. So I will keep LaMelo Ball at number 3. All right, number 4 overall, the Chicago Bulls, Dustin, went with Patrick Williams. What's your thoughts on that? Would they have kept him?
No.
Or I'm about to say someone who you do cover the Bulls, you do know the team really well. Who would you have selected at number 4 overall instead?
Forget what I said about the first 3 picks.
Okay.
Because personally, I would not have taken Anthony Edwards number 1.
Okay.
The guy that I would have taken number 1, I'm putting at number 4 because I want him in Chicago.
Okay, and who's that?
Halliburton.
Okay, Tyrese. Not a bad pick.
I grew up watching this kid in high school because his high school is 20 minutes from where I live. And when he was in high school, he was a guy that was giving you 16 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. Solid, but not like great. Went to Iowa State for 2 years and was only averaging 11, 12 points per game again. Solid, not great. And all of a sudden he goes to the NBA and he's playing like an MVP.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of look at the way Lonzo Ball played when he was running the Bulls offense, when the Bulls had the best record in the Eastern Conference before he got hurt. Tyrese Halliburton is very similar to Lonzo Ball, except he's a lot more athletically gifted. You put Halliburton with DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Kobe White, Vucevic, that offense would be scary.
Yeah, not a bad idea. For me, if obviously the Bulls would not keep Patrick Williams, I remember when he got drafted, a lot of people thought it was a reach. They were very curious as to why they drafted him. And obviously just it's not panned out with Patrick out in Chicago. For me, I would go with I think it would have been kind of that 1-2 punch you could have went with. I know they had just drafted the guy the year prior with Kobe White, but I would have went with Tyrese Maxey heading to Chicago. I mean, Maxey's done great work in Philly. He was a guy who got drafted late. Didn't have a whole lot, I'd say late in the first round, and then worked his way up in Philly and has now become one of their better players. Obviously, Joel Embiid's still the heartbeat of that team, but Maxey is one of the better point guards in the league, and just how he can run a game, how he can run the offense. And I think that definitely would have been a well fit for Chicago there, number 4. All right, moving on to number 5, the Cleveland Cavaliers selected Isaac Okoro. Would you have kept him at number 5? I mean, I'm going to lie, man. Before doing some research, I kind of forgot about Isaac Okoro.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that's primarily a role player for the Cavaliers. He's averaging around 8 points, 3 or 4 rebounds, a couple assists. So he hasn't turned into be, I think, obviously kind of a similar situation to Patrick Williams, where he really hasn't turned out to be what they expected. But when you kind of look at that Cleveland Cavaliers roster, who is Okoro better than that's in that starting lineup? So he's kind of in one of those positions where he's going to be coming off the bench. If I was picking at number 5, I would probably take Killian Hayes.
Ooh, okay.
Because Killian Hayes has actually performed very well with the Detroit Pistons. For as bad as the Pistons have been, you still have Cade Cunningham, you still have Jaden Ivey, and then you got Killian Hayes, who he's only averaging 8 points per game, but the guy's actually been at least consistent. He's been a very good on-the-ball defender. He just doesn't get the amount of minutes that I think Detroit should be giving him, especially when you look at how bad they are.
Understandable. For me, I would go with Cavaliers picking up Desmond Bane, who, in a sense, with Killian Hayes, I think that Bane is a solid defender. I think that he's done some good work out there in Memphis. Obviously, he got drafted later on in this draft, but at number 30 by Boston, but he made a name for himself in Memphis, where he's still hanging out there. But I think that if you would have put him there at number 5, back when, with Cleveland, with their current situation, with Mitchell, Garland, Sexton, that young core, the young centers they got, I thought Bane was one of the better defenders out of this draft. And I think that would have helped out just Cleveland as a whole. So he's got my pick at number 5. All right, we are halfway through, my friend, halfway through the draft. Number 6 overall, the Atlanta Hawks, my hometown team. They went with
this one first.
They what?
I said I'll let you take this one first since it's your hometown team.
I understand. They went with Onyeka Okongwu, who's still with the team, who he gets a little bit of starting minutes here and there, but obviously it's Clint Capella's team still, or his team still. Obviously, he was out of USC. I don't think he's a bad player. I don't think that, I think that he has good talent, but I don't know if I would have selected him at number 6. The Hawks, as we know, they just need some defense. They need some defense. For me, I would have went with maybe Jade McDaniels, a really strong defensive player, and someone that he's got some good speed. He's good off the dribble, and like I mentioned, he's a great defender. And that's what the Hawks need. That's what the Hawks need. So we went with Jade McDaniels, going number 6 overall to the Atlanta Hawks in favor of Onyeka Okongwu. Still a young guy. I still think he has some potential, but I don't know if I would have went with him in a top 10 pick. Who do you think, man? Who do you have going number 6 overall to Atlanta?
A player that they acquired from the Pistons, Sadiq Bey.
Yeah. I mean, he's there now. He's doing a good job.
Yeah, and I mean, he was a 19th pick in this initial draft, and
Yeah.
Sadiq Bey was probably the Pistons' second best player behind Cade Cunningham, and they just pretty much let him get away for nobody, really. And he's actually performed pretty well in Atlanta.
Yeah, they traded him for, I don't even know what it was, for not much. And then that's when it was, I forget what the number was, but it was the Pistons.
They are 10-68 since they traded Sadiq Bey.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for that. That's the exact what I was thinking of, because once Sadiq left, the Pistons fell off a cliff.
They were 4 games out of the final play-in spot.
Yeah.
I think they were 4 games out of that final play-in spot when they traded Sadiq Bey, and they've gone 10-68 since.
Oh man, we're gonna have to do a deep dive of this Pistons team once the season's over. That's for sure. All right, and speaking of the Pistons, that's how we work things around here. Number 7, the Pistons went with Killian Hayes, number 7 overall. Obviously, you had him going earlier in said draft. So who would you have as a replacement in Detroit for this pick?
A guy that really doesn't get as much attention as he deserves, and that's Devin Vessel.
Yeah.
Out of Florida State, drafted at number 11 to the San Antonio Spurs. They're kind of in a similar situation where they have Victor Wembanyama, but they are one of the worst teams in the NBA. But you have a guy in Devin Vassell who is averaging basically 18 points per game, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists. That's a very solid player that the Pistons could definitely use right now. And if you would have paired him up with Cade Cunningham, he probably would be averaging at least 20 points per game in Detroit, but that would give Detroit a pretty nice guard-forward combination.
Yeah, not a bad pick at all. But Killian Hayes, obviously he's still super young. Detroit obviously is one of the younger teams in the league. I mean, he's very streaky. Whenever I see him play, he's very streaky. He can be hot, he can be cold. Just needs to find some consistency. So I would have them going instead with Devin Vassell, as you mentioned, who's been one of the kind of underrated scorers, you could say, in this draft in terms of people you look at. And not a lot of people show him love, only because I think he's in San Antonio, which, ever since the big three got blown up years and years ago, they haven't been getting nearly as much media attention, before they got Wembanyama. But I think that Vassell's been a great pickup for San Antonio, and I think that he would have definitely helped out this Pistons team sooner rather than later. All right, let's go to New York now. The Knicks went with Obi Toppin, number 8 overall. Dustin, would you have kept him here?
I would not. He was kind of a similar situation as like Patrick Williams and James Wiseman, a guy that came in a little bit unproven because he didn't have a long career in college, but he was very athletic. He was very good, and he came from a small college in Dayton, so of course he's going to put up big numbers at Dayton, but he really hasn't been able to put it together in the NBA. I would go Desmond Bane at number 8 with the Knicks.
Not a bad pick. Not a bad pick at all. I mean, like I had said, get some defending out there in New York, and he would have probably been a crowd favorite potentially.
And he'd be the guard combo with Jalen Brunson, and now with the trade that brought in OG Anunoby, you would have Brunson, Bane, and Anunoby as basically your big 3 in New York, with Julius Randle added to the mix.
There you go. All right, for me, I'm gonna go with a guy who they did not pick up in this draft, but who is on the team right now, and that's IQ Emmanuel Quickley. I'd say just once, or he was second in 6th man of the year not too long ago. Really solid player, can do good on offense and defense, and obviously he's there now and he's doing some good work. So I would have kept IQ. I would have got him a lot sooner rather than a little bit later in the draft. So I would have them swap there. All right, number 9, and forgive me if I butcher this pronunciation, the Washington Wizards selected Denji Adjiva. I honestly, dude,
wow.
There you go. See, that's why we keep you around. At least Jay's not on this panel. But
we would have had if Jay was on here, it would have been Danny Abdijaja or something like that.
He said, "All right, so we got DA here at number 8. At number 9, going to the Washington Wizards. Would you have kept him here, man, or would you have went someone else?"
No, I definitely would have went somebody else. And kind of the same thoughts that you just had with Emmanuel Quickley. I wouldn't go Quickley here, but I would go with another guard that has really emerged as probably a top 2 or 3 point guard in the Eastern Conference. I would say probably a top 10 point guard overall, and that's Tyrese Maxey.
Okay.
Washington was pretty much the Bradley Beal show for however long Bradley Beal was there, and he was always hurt. He was always hurt, but when he played, he could score. And really, Washington really did not have a legitimate point guard outside of those 2 years that Russell Westbrook was there that actually got him into the playoffs. So I think Tyrese Maxey would have been that point guard to come in that could have at least put some stability at the point guard position.
Yeah, well said. I think for me, the Washington Wizards, I would have had them going with Okongwu, having a big center, helping him out there. And look, as we know, Washington, they're not doing much right now, man. They are one of the worst teams in the league, behind, Detroit, with the combo, right, of Kyle Kuzma doing some good work out there, and Jordan Poole, which is, they're doing something. That's for sure. They are doing something. So I think a young center would have helped out that Washington team. Like I said, Bradley Beal, who was still there, he was hurt, but I just think that they would have done better than who they selected. All right, man. Final one here. Number 10 overall pick. The Phoenix Suns selected at the time Jalen Smith. Dustin, who would they have selected in favor of Jalen Smith?
There's a lot of options you could go here, especially when you look at the Suns not having a very good bench and really not much bench scoring. Isaiah Stewart would be an option here, Emmanuel Quickley. But I think that at this point you would have started to put your focus on life after Chris Paul, because everyone knew that Chris Paul was going to retire at some point or at least move on. I like Cole Anthony in this spot. I think Cole Anthony would fit really well with Devin Booker and obviously now Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal, because he could have sat behind Chris Paul as kind of the team's sixth man for a couple of years. And then by year 3, he would have been the one running that offense.
Okay, not bad. For me, this is, for me, instead of Jalen Smith, I would have had the Suns rocking with Josh Green. I do like the Cole Anthony pick. I was tossing up between those two, but since you went with them, I'll go Josh Green. One of the better defenders in this draft, really good 3-ball, and would have done a good job. I think as a role player early on in that Phoenix team, as you mentioned, when they had DeAndre Ayton, Chris Paul, and Devin Booker and company. I think he could have fit in nicely as that 3-and-D type of player. But as we know, Phoenix has changed a lot, Dustin, since 2020. A lot of players have come and gone in that franchise. So as we look overall at the 2020 NBA draft, if you had to give it like an A through an F, we'll just go first round. How would you go with it?
I'm going to say probably a C. Mainly because Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball. Those two guys obviously were worth being top 3 picks.
Yeah.
But then the rest of the top 10, Wiseman, Williams, Okoro, Okongwu, Killian Hayes, Obi Toppin, Avdija, Jalen Smith. None of them have really done much. But then you get into picks like 11 through 15. Vassell, Halliburton, Cole Anthony, Isaiah Stewart. All 4 of those guys are better than probably 7 of the top 10 picks. And then you have Desmond Bane and some of those guys towards the back end of the first draft, Maxey. So, I mean, the top 10, I would give the top 10 a D, just because you had 2 guys that were good and the rest were terrible. But then the rest of the first round, I would give a B, just because of Desmond Bane and some of those other guys. So probably a C overall.
Yeah, I think that's a good grade. Like I said, they've got some good players here, obviously, but it's nothing that you'll look back on and think this is one of the better draft classes all time. Like I said, definitely some solid standouts overall in this 2020 NBA draft. Well, Dustin, as always, man, I appreciate you coming on the show, talking some basketball as we go through a deep dive of these drafts. Obviously, in a future video, we'll be covering the 2021 NBA redraft, and that's going to be fun seeing who all we select around there. And guys, once again, check us out on social media on all of our platforms here. Best way to find us, though, is still going to be in our link tree, which is in the description of all of our episodes. Stat Guy Dustin Reese, I've been your host, producer, Logan Landers. Enjoy your weekend, everyone. Go and watch some sports. We'll talk to y'all again on another live episode. We'll see you soon.